Persuasive speech take 6. Hi, my name is Luke Scavang, and today I'd like to speak to you about poverty. According to Concern Worldwide US, there is 588 million people who live off of less than $1.90 a day. That is 7.7% of the population. There are already many bills to help poverty, but they don't cover everyone. We need to stand up for these people and help those in need. To start, here's the definition of poverty from Investopedia. Poverty is a state or condition in which a person or community lacks the financial resources and essentials for a minimum standard of living. Poverty means that the income level from employment is so low that basic human needs can't be met. Poverty-stricken people and families might go without proper housing, clean water, healthy food, and medical attention. Each nation may have its own threshold that determines how many of its people are living in poverty. Being in poverty means being under a certain amount determined by the Department of Health and Human Services. The amount of money needed is determined by the number of people in the household. The number of kids in the household, the number of people in that same household, or the number of people above the age of 65. Factors like housing, healthcare, food, fresh water, schools, and electricity can cause poverty. Other factors such as gender, race, and location can also be a cause for poverty. This can be passed from one generation on to the next. Typically, if a child is from a poverty-stricken household, they're more likely to be sick and have more mental and physical illnesses. Kids Count says that there are currently 17% of children in the U.S. that are poverty-stricken. That is more than 12 million kids. According to Concerns Worldwide US, there is 4 different types of poverty: occasionally poor, cyclical poor, usually poor, and always poor. Occasionally poor don't usually go beneath the poverty line unless a disaster would strike their home. Agricultural families are more susceptible to cyclical poorness, as seasons of good harvests and poor harvests might make them more vulnerable. Usually poor are generally below the poverty line, but usually whenever they have something good happen to them, such as a good fortune, such as winning the lottery or finding money in the street, or certain acts that would make them financially well, might bring them above for a short amount of time. And always poor, no matter how much money comes towards them, are always below the poverty line, and they just can't stay above it. The poverty trap is actually something that is created in most financial cities. A poverty trap is caused for a need for financials in order to gain financials, which leads for people to go deeper and deeper into poverty to try and escape poverty. This can be caused because of a lack of health care, schooling, or basic needs. Some of these things can cause poverty traps, including limited access to credit and capital markets, extreme environmental degradation, which depletes agricultural productions, potentials, corrupt governance, capital flight, poor education systems, disease ecology, lack of public health care, war, and poor infrastructure. Jeffrey Sachs says this, and I quote, "The poor start with a very low level of capital per person, and then find themselves trapped in poverty because the ratio of capital per person actually falls from generation to generation. The amount of capital per person declines when the population is growing faster than the capital is being accumulated. The question for growth in per capita income is whether the next capital accumulation is large enough to keep up with population growth. That is acceptable for billionaires to pay capital gains taxes at rates far lower than the income tax that middle-class Americans pay, while 11.3 million people are unemployed, and millions are bumping up against unemployment benefits limits. Exposes and debases priorities of Washington. That the estate tax has been so eviscerated that only a few thousand estates per year are subject to taxes, while nearly 1 in 4 children live in poverty, is simply hair-raising. Some of the typical consequences of poverty include alcohol and substance abuse, less access to education, poor housing and living conditions, and increased levels of disease. Heightened poverty is likely to cause increased tensions in society as inequality increases. These issues often lead to rising crime rates in communities that are affected by poverty. As said in the Nations in their 2013 paper, and I quote, "These ignored Americans include kids like the ones I interviewed in Los Angeles, forced to choose between applying to college or a drop out of school and getting dead-end jobs to support parents who had lost not only their jobs but their homes too. They included the elderly lady I met outside Dallas who was too poor to retire but too sick to take the bus to her work at Walmart. Her solution? She paid her neighbor's gas money to drive her to a job that paid so little she routinely ate either 88-cent TV dinners or went to bed hungry. They included, too, the residents of New Orleans' lower 9th Ward I met in 2011, who 6 years after Hurricane Katrina were still living in appalled conditions in a largely obliterated community. They say unless we slash what is left of the safety net by gutting food stamps, which alone keeps 4 million people out of poverty and alleviates the hardships of millions more, putting stricter limits on unemployment benefits and other harsh measures, that we're doomed to go down the Greek road to ruin. In fact, this country has more than enough resources to grapple with poverty. What we're sorely lacking is not resources, but political will and empathy. In modern-day America, it has somehow become easier to bravely sally forth to do battle against assistance for the hungry and destitute and the down on their luck than to talk sensibly about the causes of mass poverty and rampant inequality that so many leaders of the country with a $17 trillion economy tolerate. So much misery amid so much plenty, normalizing child hunger and allowing a significant part of the labor forces to work full-time, if not more, and yet still be unable to pay basic bills, is one of the greatest scandals of our age." That was a quote by The Nation in their 2013 paper. The balance states that programs like SNAP, Medicare, and CHIP, ACA Extended Medicare, ACA, Head Start and Early Head Start, and TANF use the poverty line to determine eligibility for their programs. There's also plenty of other bills that are shown on govtrack.us, like the American Rescue Plan, the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act, Protecting Moms Who Serve Act, the Parks, Jobs, and Equality Act, and the Electric Vehicles for Underserved Communities Act that we can use to help these underappreciated minorities. Investopedia states that some ways these people are combating this are the United Nations and the World Banks, who are trying to reduce poverty to less than 3%. They would do this by installing wells that provide access to clean drinking water, educating farmers on how to produce more food, constructing shelters for the poor, building schools to educate disadvantaged communities, and providing enhanced access to better healthcare services by building medical clinics and hospitals. For this to work, communities, governments, and corporations would need to collaborate to implement strategies that improve living conditions for the world's poor. Jeffrey Sachs states that agencies should fund up startups to help build developing nations. Places that should be invested include human capital, health, education, nutrition, infrastructure, road, power, water and sanitation, environmental conservation, natural capital, conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems, public institutional capital, and well-run public administration, judicial systems, police force, parts of knowledgeable capital, scientific research for health, energy, agriculture, climate, and also ecology. These would be the startups that we should be funding, that we should take the time and the effort to be able to help with all of these minorities, with all of these groups. Concern Worldwide US states that marginalization and inequality could also be a major cause of poverty. Fixing inequality among minorities could be the key to lessening this poverty. Basically stating that we should all come together, that we should not allow ourselves to be divided, but work together as one continuous unit. One.org states that a bill by the Senate in 2019, whether it was passed or not is still unknown, could prevent crises instead of responding to crises, and would help to reduce poverty. How public health practices, the paper states that empowerment, opportunity, and education are 3 things that could help those in poverty with healthcare. And finally, the Borgen Project states that us as U.S. citizens can do things to help end poverty. We don't have to have a Senate seat. We don't have to have an influential, opinion. All we have to do is simple things. Donating to organizations such as those who finish poverty, to those who donate to the poor, to those who help out these groups of unappreciated minorities. Donating to them could make a huge difference, even just a small amount. Volunteering, going to a soup kitchen, going to your local nursing home, and helping out could really make the difference for any of these people. Going and buying from a local family-owned business might just be the thing to help stimulate your economy, help get more jobs, help to make more money for that company. Don't go to Walmart or Target or Lowe's and buy all your products. Go to a local family-owned business so that way they can reap the benefits, so that way they could create jobs, so that way they could help stimulate the economy and bring it back to life. And finally, going to your representative and telling them, hey, this is the issue that you need to focus on. This is who you're representing, and we want you to help us. Going and writing a letter, going and writing an email, going and making a phone call, or just simply walking up into the street and asking them. I mean, our mayor lives just a few streets up. If we wanted to, we could walk up there and say, hey, this is the issue that we have. Can you do something to help us fix this? I mean, it's as simple as that. Doing these things could make all the difference. And if each of us do it, then we could make a difference. Truthfully, the reason I did this paper and the reason why I feel so powerfully about these are because I see these things. I see friends and family. I see my grandparents. I see coworkers who struggle to pay bills, who struggle to put food on the table from week to week, who have struggled to pay their medical bills, who struggle to go and just be able to have a life outside of their house because of the amount of money that they would need to fix that. Heck, my grandma and pap, by the time they got done with their medical bills, they would have $200 or $300 in all of their prescriptions, and to the point of where they wouldn't have enough money to buy food. Now, which is more important, the life-saving medicine that you need to stay alive, or the food that you also need to stay alive? Why do these people have to pick? 2 people that I work with, a mother and a daughter, have to trade back and forth their car. As one goes to work, the other one has to take the car to work as the other one goes to bed. And then they have to switch back because that's just how it works. They don't have 2 cars to be able to, for both of them to go to work. They have to use the same car, and they have to time when and how they can get to work. It is sad that they can't afford that. They have to live in the same small apartment because they can't afford to have several houses. They can't afford to even have a single house. They have to afford whatever they can, and they can't live beyond their means. Now, I admit, I've never had any problem with money. I've never had to beg for money on the side of the street. I've had a good house. I've had lots of electricity. I've had lots of food, good food, and lots of things that I probably don't need. But I see these things around me, and it breaks my heart to look at them, to know these things, to see people around me, friends and family and co-workers who can't live beyond their means, who have maybe 10 to 20 bucks in their name at the end of the paycheck after everything has been paid. These things are very concerning to me, and it breaks my heart to see them. My grandma and pap, they were always concerned because they couldn't buy us Christmas presents. They couldn't buy us birthday presents. They didn't have the money to. They were always strapped for cash, so they never had the money. And at the end of the day, we never minded. We never cared. It always felt like it meant more for them to be there than it did for them to be able to buy us a Christmas present or a birthday present. But I know that it made them feel bad. I know that they were sad that they couldn't buy us a present for our birthdays or for Christmas, simply because they know that that's what they wanted to do as grandparents. And I've caught them a couple of times doing it, even though they knew they didn't have it. And I really wish that they would have that, to be able to do these things, to be able to not have to feel bad about these things. And I mean, it just breaks my heart. The fact that they couldn't have anything to be able to live beyond their means. And the fact that they had to feel bad about those things, simply because they didn't have enough money to buy a birthday present or a Christmas present for us. And in conclusion, poverty is a very harsh issue that needs to be stopped. It's something that I hold dear to my heart. It is a plague to our society. It's causing sickness, homelessness, starvation, and dehydration for lack of water, and families who are very, very poor and unfortunate. To quote the president, trickle-down economics has never worked. It is time to build out the middle and lower classes and to help those who are in extreme poverty and who are unable to be able to cope with the finances that are needed. Together, even we can do the littlest of things and make the biggest differences to our community, to the world, and to everywhere around us. Together we can make a bigger difference than we could ever imagine. I thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed.